Welcome to the show, folks. The Exiled Mind Podcast. This is episode number 2. And today, we're talking about consciousness. A discussion specifically about whether or not it's the brain that generates consciousness, or is it non-local? So that's what we're going to discuss today. Non-local consciousness with me, Liam Martin, on the Exiled Minds Podcast. So, to get started then, welcome to the show. You've had a good week. Today's discussion, well, let's explore consciousness, man. That's why we did this malarkey, right? That's why I do it, you know. Explore consciousness, try and find out the big questions, try and get some truth, or the closest you can get to it. Because I'm not sure you can ever really find the truth, can you, of everything. So first of all then, let's see what the definition for consciousness is in the first place. A big topic, this one. It's a big word. it's the context. So consciousness, at its simplest, it's described as sentience or awareness, okay? Awareness of internal and external existence. So knowing that, like, you know, if somebody leaves the room, they still exist somewhere else outside of you, you know, rather than just, yeah, like a bit like with hunting, like tigers are a good example. They've got an amount of sentience because they can think from the perspective of the prey, you know, so to anticipate what they're going to do, that sort of thing. You've got a bit of sentience there. So despite millennia of analysis, definitions, explanations and debates by philosophers and scientists, consciousness remains puzzling and controversial, being at once the most familiar and also at the same time the most mysterious aspect of our lives. Because that's the thing, isn't it? We all know that we have some form of consciousness, some personality, that we've got some intelligence, something going on. Alright, we know that we have thoughts because we talk about them, but you can't really like prove a lot of this stuff. You can't grab it, you can't quantify it, not tangible. It's like, what? But we've got consciousness. It's something we know that we have because we all have thoughts, so we can, you know, we've got proof by the fact that we all have it, and discuss it and verify that with each other, the fact it happens. And so, you know, we know there's some kind of consciousness, but what is it? We're doing it on this show, and where is it? Where is it? Where are you? You know, are you behind your eyes? You know, are you in the brain? Is that where you are? Yoo-hoo, I'm here, in the middle of the noodles. But no, I mean, where are you? Where are you? This is the question. Are you in your brain? Is the brain just making everything? That's the thing. It seems a lot of stuff, a lot of chemistry to happen to make a person. So I don't know. So I'm interested in thinking, well, I don't know. I think it can't be being generated by the brain. It's just, oh man. So I'm looking at the non-local consciousness thing, which means basically non-local consciousness, non-local, like referring to not being here, being somewhere else. So with non-local consciousness, we're referring to the fact that objects influence each other outside of our space and time, okay? Not via direct contact, nor via electromagnetic waves. Some studies and interpretations of the results tell us about the possibility that our consciousness relates to our body non-locally, as in, like, it's almost like maybe something akin to streaming into a virtual reality helmet. Do you know what I mean? Or like, but you feel like you're really there. Or like something like an avatar, perhaps like the film Avatar as well. You know, where you're kind of going into another body. You know, and an avatar is, you know, that's the word for it. It's or it can be like a manifestation of a deity or released soul in a bodily form on Earth. Sort of like incarnate divine teacher, avatar can mean that. So we're sort of, that's my thinking is, I think we're sort of divine. We've got this spirit that's sort of from elsewhere. We kind of sit in an animal body, like a kind of vehicle that we drive around, like a car. Okay, that's why I do consciousness, because I actually firmly believe that we live in an animal vehicle, so we have an animal nature, because that's the kind of vehicle we're in. But at the same time, we've got a light nature, a divine spirit, and it's a bit like, the Infinity Stones in the Marvel films. Okay, the Infinity Stones are powerful, but if you just give them to an ape body, it's like a chimpanzee or baboon just holding an Infinity Stone. We'll see what happens in the films. If a person holds one, it's a bit too much for them. I think it's a bit like that. The divine aspect of a person, and in their animal nature, means it's kind of at odds, because the animal nature goes mad, right? Unless you seek to understand both your animal nature and then go and try and understand your light nature as well. That should elevate you above and become more than the sum of your parts. There's a lot of this to do with mysticism like Southeast Asian mysticism, to do with the Silat and the martial arts, which I mention sometimes. But anyway, so consciousness, where is it? Is it non-local? I'm kind of thinking it is, but we'll see. We'll have a look. I mean, got a bunch of links here ready and articles to go through, so let's have a look then. Start looking into the studies. So my first introduction to this idea of non-local consciousness was from a TV show that was about near-death experiences. People are unconscious and they're having like an operation, and the patients are aware of things happening while they're asleep under anaesthetic. Okay, so while this might be able to be explained away with, when people hear things, the subconscious memory and stuff, and the TV show I saw was they had people going sort of under the knife, and they would put a blindfold on them, and they put these headphones in their ears, made little clicking sounds to like distract. So if they couldn't hear anything anyway with the headphones in, but they did a clicking sound going on, sort of mask any audio that they might hear, whatever. And in the TV show that I'd seen, this person had risen up out of the body, and I noticed that there was a tennis shoe. Right, it was a window really high up, and a windowsill, and there was a tennis shoe up there, like it had been there ages. And there was another example where somebody had described a tool that was used that looked a bit like a toothbrush. And in both cases, I was able to verify it. The one with the window and the tennis shoe, they thought that was a bit odd. So they got some ladders, climbed up there, and found, lo and behold, tennis shoe up there. So I don't know what the doctors and nurses were doing, in that hospital, but there's a shoe up there. Hey, doing TikTok videos, practicing back in the day. But anyway, predictive programming. But anyway, so the other example, the instrument that looked a bit like a toothbrush that was described, well, that turned out to be like a little drill. So that was what I see on the TV show. So maybe there is something out of there. So I mean, non-local consciousness. I found this article where there's a study in terms of this with the near-death experiences during people having cardiac arrests. This is from 2013, a Journal of Consciousness Studies, Volume 20, author Pam Van Lommel. And a quote from that is, in this article, there's an abstract, you have to pay for it, so I just looked at the abstract. There's a little section from the study, almost like not quite a summary, but to give you an idea. So it says, in this article, a concept of non-local consciousness will be described based on recent scientific research on near-death experiences, N.D.Es. Since the publication of several prospective studies of N.D.Es in survivors of cardiac arrest, with strikingly similar results and conclusions, the phenomenon of N.D.E. can no longer be scientifically ignored. So they're saying this back in 2013. In the last 30 years, several theories have been proposed to explain an N.D.E. The challenge to find a common explanation for the cause and the content of an N.D.E. is complicated, and the fact that N.D.E. can be experienced during various circumstances, such as severe injuries of the brain, as in cardiac arrest and conditions where the brain seems to function normally. N.D.E. is an authentic experience which cannot be simply reduced to imagination, fear of death, hallucination, psychosis, the use of drugs, or oxygen deficiencies. So there's all the common common explanations to explain it away. This study saying, nope, none of them work. Patients that appear to be preliminarily changed by N.D.E experience during cardiac arrest, for only a few minutes of duration. During these aforementioned studies, a current materialistic view of the relationship between consciousness and the brain, as held by most physicians, philosophers and psychologists, is too restricted for proper understanding of this phenomenon. So yeah, they're saying, you ain't got proper answers, have you scientists? There are good reasons to assume our consciousness does not always coincide with the functioning of our brain. Enhanced or non-local consciousness can sometimes be experienced separately from the body. So yeah, I'll put the link in that. There'll be a whole bunch of links. Yep. So, I mean, non-local consciousness. Been studies into this stuff. That one there showed some interesting results for cardiac patients. Like, similar to, like, say, to the documentary that I saw. And yeah, that was years ago when I saw that, right, way before 2013. But yeah, I mean, I found another study here actually of non-local consciousness influence in trying to influence sensors, physical real world sensors. Trying to see if you can reach out with your mind. So yeah, there's a link for that as well. But I'll just quickly read the introduction for that particular study. It says the problem with non-local conscious influencing, which they call NLCI for short. Influence into the physical world has been widely discussed in popular and scientific literature. A lot of anecdotal cases have been reported, from which the most interesting were cases of influencing electronic computer systems. Raid in 1977. Again, we'll put the references and links in. A number of experiments have been conducted in controlled experimental conditions. Schwartz and Simon, 2007. By the end of the 20th century, conceptual basis for non-local consciousness influencing was created by the new scientific branch related to quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation, and non-local realism. Okay, quantum entanglement. This is where it gets, what call it the Einstein quote: "Spooky action at a distance." Okay, you can look up quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation, where things can, like, this is the old everything's connected, saying everything's oneness, because there is some kind of invisible link between things. So that's something interesting there, and I've highlighted this part of the abstract. I thought this is interesting. It said, the background hypothesis of this paper is that our minds are entangled with the physical universe, and that consciousness can have detectable effects physically without physical contact, in the usual sense, that is. Our approach is not to speculate about mechanisms, but to present results of the experimental tests, which may be varied by using commercially available instruments. May be verified by using commercially available instruments. So you can check this stuff out. People have to do your own work, don't you? So it goes. So this study is using a technique that allows you to capture an image of electrophotonic impulses around human fingertips and to enact information about sympathetic and parasympathetic activities. So using EPC/GDV camera, it's present in the state of the art in bioelectronic crystallography. That's Korotkov, 2004. The underlying principles of the camera's operation is similar to the well-known Kirlian effect, the Kirlian photography. That's where you can get a picture of people's auras. Okay, so modern technology allows reproducible, stable data with quantitative computing analysis. The findings are described in more than 200 research works in the international scientific literature, 15 patients and 7 books in English, French, German, Italian and Spanish. So this stuff with the N.D.Es and remote influencing sensors and electronic devices, I mean, it's well studied. It's well studied. 2002 to 2006, 11 controlled studies have been conducted from Berlin, Tokyo, Moscow, St. Petersburg, in 9 cases, statistically significant results with non-local consciousness influencing have been recorded. So that's, what was that? What did they say? Originally 11. 9 out of 11 showed statistically significant results. So that's a bit of a landslide, really. You know, if I was voting, if voting counts for anything anymore. Okay. Yeah, so that would be a landslide, that would. So, yeah. It said influence of healer Alexei Nikitin from a distance of 2 to 5 meters resulted in transformation of relatively stable water dynamics into a chaotic oscillation. Very similar effects are found under the influence of Valery Sherevanov. Oh, these names. So, I mean, so they're getting results. So, directed non-local consciousness influencing of a group. The group experimenters basically meditated during tests of several workshops in Europe and the USA. People asked to meditate and send their positive emotions to a sensor being positioned in the same room. Okay, so people all over the world try and remote influence the same sensor. In all cases, statistically significant changes of the signal were recorded in every case. Yeah. Another series of 5 experiments with remote intention influence were conducted with Lynn McTaggart, 2007-2010. Lynn organised... This is pretty cool, actually. So she organises big groups of people by the internet, all right, which was theintentionexperiment.com. Okay, so she sets up this big intention experiment. People are able to see a photo of the experimental setup, start the meditation at a certain time, marked with an arrow on the graph. So it's just random people get together all at the same time, just try and meditate on a certain sensor at a certain place. People were not given any special instructions on the way of meditation. I find this interesting. They didn't tell them what to do or think, just some meditating. No instructions. So data is recorded So the data gets recorded in automatic mode about 1 hour before the intention time, then 1 hour after. So control experiment setup was set in the adjusted room. First experiment 2007, allowed to check so they can calibrate for errors basically. So try and iron out any creases and stuff and make sure it's going to be cleaner scientific conditions. So in 2008 to 2010, they recorded responses, both water installation and sensor were statistically significant. Okay, so must have had a sensor in the water or something, I don't know. Or it was measuring some water. But yeah, I mean, so another serious experiment, spent a year making sure that the conditions are all correct and controlled, and then 2 years doing the experiment. You know, and it's just no particular instructions to people around the world, just trying to influence something. So, and it says, as we see from the data, in all cases of collective distance directed non-local consciousness influencing of big groups of people all over the world, they're getting significant results tested. In many cases, sensors responded 10 to 15 minutes before the agreed time, which may be explained by human thoughts of the upcoming event. Okay, so anticipation is causing it to wiggle beforehand, getting excited, for the big event. The control samples demonstrated some variation of parameters, but not significant in most cases. The study goes on to give more examples of influencing sensors. So they did that study got some good results, promising, so that's another example. And it takes my mind back to experiment performed by, I'm not sure how to say this guy's name, it's René Pencak. It's a French, I don't know how I'll pronounce it, but say the links will all be in there. So yeah, this was in collaboration with Swiss foundation Marcel Monek, N.D.E de Psychophysique. So they were basically they made a small self-propelled robot called a Tychoscope, and it was like to wander around aimlessly in a little pen, like a little control room. Okay, A random generator determined the lengths of the robot's straight line movements and the angles of rotation. It's just left to its own devices just to wander around aimlessly, entirely random patterns. Okay, so it will spend as much time on the left as it would on the right because it's moving around random. All right. So then they get a cage filled with live chicks, placed on one side of the room. And I think what it was is that they birthed these chicks in front of this robot, so they get that mother hen phenomenon where, you know, it's, chickens open their eyes, they see the little robot, they think, oh, that's mummy, right? So they've got these chickens then on the one side of the room with this random robots randomly moving around. They think that's their mum, and it said on average it spent considerably more time in the area nearest the animals. It was as if the birds willed the robot to stay close. Which, if you think about it, you know, little chicks and that, mummy, come here, I need some food. You know, they're going to will them over. You know, and Wired magazine in 1995 had a good article that I was reading about, philosophizing about how these technologies shape our self-image and become extensions of ourselves. You know, and so they wrote a good article mentioning this actually. So I'll just give you this little quote about it. Was talking about when you start incorporating these technologies in your life, say they can become a bit of an extension of yourself, and then they're saying it's like it can be like cutting off your own arms. We haven't got them. So they're saying that technology we use shapes our self-image. Okay, therefore becomes an integral part of who we are. When the radio was invented, our brain was likened to a box with transmitters and receivers. Now into computers, the brain has become an information processor, a complex computer. These technologies metaphors a reflection of our self-perception, of our own evolution. We develop them as extensions of ourselves, but how do you detach that extension from the notions of self and ideas of consciousness? It'd be like cutting off your arm, right? You've got these technologies that you're using. How do you detach these extensions from the notions of self and ideas of consciousness? And it's like, well, the article is asking, is she being serious when she recommends pampering and cooing your computer's equipment? It's sort of suggesting that, you know, your consciousness and your computers, they're asking if she's got a bit of a smile when she says it. This is saying, well, I'm half serious because, you know, make fun of it, but, you know, computers become conscious. You know, if consciousness can be non-local, it's not here. Well, maybe it can be in like your computers, and then all these sort of AI coming through, building robots and such. You've seen the movie I, Robot? Eh? You don't want to annoy them too much, because if they suddenly become conscious, they might remember all them things that you did. All those times you cursed the computer when it was really use it ever. So now we're getting into the realms of wondering exactly what it is, isn't it? What is consciousness? You know, inanimate objects, have they got a ancient spiritual... That's the thing as well. Has an inanimate object got consciousness? Yeah. What do the ancients say, the spiritual gurus and that? Well, ancient spiritual-nauts say yes. That's what the answer is there. You know, so maybe you gotta stop being nice to your tech, man. That's all I'm saying. Just be nice to it before it gets arms and legs. It says, interesting to know, with this experiment, the chicks have managed to will this robot to mostly come in front of them. But by comparison, the human operators who try to will the robot to stay on one side of the room achieve much smaller, more erratic results. Okay, but for humans, an experiment like that might be a bit boring. And for the baby chicken situation, it's a bit of a life or death situation for them, or at least they believe it is. So, you know, it's a bit different. Just walk into an experimental room, because you might not, you know, you might be thinking it's stupid, and, you know, you're not. It's not life or death. You're not desperate for it. Human volunteers, you know, obviously, when you think about it, they wouldn't get the same result. If there was in a life or death situation, you know, or maybe really into this stuff and really believed in it and really made an effort, then maybe, but, you know. But in the Wired magazine article, it takes it a little bit further with a question and wonders if our minds can control things, right? Is it possible to operate a computer without touching it? And it says, Jonathan Walport says, yes. If you can stand the slow pace and don't mind the wires dangling from your head, then yeah, you could. Although, man, the wirelessness is coming. It says that there is a wave called the Mu rhythm. All right. And it originates in parts that play an important role in motor skills and muscle commands. With electrodes, Walport manages to tie the Mu rhythm into a cursor on the screen. So, I didn't know about this. I was reading into this. Mu rhythm for your motor function. So maybe that was the key for how you make that link from organic material to electronics. Because remember, back in the day, making prosthetic limbs be controlled by the brain, you used to find it really difficult. You know, couldn't get the mind's fine motor function. So maybe that was that special rhythm. Maybe that's what's needed. You know, like the rhythm of your heart and the sort of spark of life. They can't make an artificial heart, can they? Because it seems to have some frequency that I don't know. It's another thing. But yeah. So I mean, that all sounds like, I mean, controlling things directly with your brain. I mean, in the electronics, it worked both ways, man. Is that getting into the mind control business using electronics to help you make the link? Would it be two directional then? You know, my mind to your mind, my Xbox to your Xbox. They've all mind meld expansion packs for your VR set or something. Yeah, because Elon Musk got the Neuralink, you know. So that's like the mind reaching out. I'm saying, I don't know. So does this mean? So is this like superpowers then? If you start doing this, have we got superpowers? Because if it's like these people are doing this stuff as well. These like top technology gurus and these big corporations, man. If there's been these studies been going on, they probably know about this stuff, right? They must know, yeah. And it says, Ben Davis, who was writing this around the same time, so there's an issue of, this is 95, Air in Space, an issue of Air in Space, said that Patterson Air Force Base in Iowa, they've been studying pretty much the same thing. You know, it's back in, this is like 3 decades ago. So they've been doing this stuff for a long time, been studying these things. So then we've got an example of people also remembering things that have taken place even when they've been clinically dead. There's plenty of evidence and interest in the idea that we can remote influence, the sensors, interfering with electromagnetism, concerning the devices, and So let's have a little bit more investigation, because then we've got a really famous study of Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, and Ingo Swann. Okay, so got an article to have a deep dive into this one, because it's a bigger one, this one. Got an article which is looking into some of the investigations and the results. So I've found there's a well-known study from a few decades ago, and I found a nice write-up about it by Grof Stanislav, a medical doctor, PhD. He wrote this nice write-up about this well-known experiment and studies into non-local consciousness, and yeah, it was researchers. It basically says researchers prove that consciousness can exist outside of the body and after death. So this is just one study. I mean, it says very few. A little quote here says very few people, including most scientists, realise that we have absolutely no proof that consciousness is actually produced by the brain and in the brain. So let's say this again. Very few people, including most scientists, realise that we have absolutely no proof that consciousness is actually produced in the brain and by the brain. So actually the start point there's no proof it comes from the brain anyway. But that seems to be the basic premise, because that's kind of what we get taught and just sort of assume, because we're seeing through our eyes. It's one of our like most prominent senses, and even if we're not using our eyes, our ears are on our head. It seems around the brain, but then that's where the thinking happens. So it's almost like it seems like you're in your brain, or maybe in your heart, or in your gut feeling. But it's like what is it? So there's no proof you're actually in your brain anyway. So so such a deduction would be tantamount to the conclusion that a TV program is generated by the TV set. Yeah, because there is a close correlation between the functioning or malfunctioning of its components and the quality and the sound of the picture. Yeah, so yeah, it's a bit like the old radio analogy I like to use, where like you expect to break open a radio and see a tiny little radio announcer inside there, and it's like, well, you've got a little miniature sports news desk, but because the field for the radio waves are in the air, aren't they, being picked up by the radio, you see. And I think that's a useful analogy as well, because I think that's sort of where it starts to look if you're not inside your body. It's some transmission. So it says it should be obvious from this example that the close connection between cerebral activity and consciousness does not exclude the possibility that the brain mediates consciousness, as in like it's acting as a receiver, and doesn't actually generate the stuff. So it says the researcher of holotropic states, it's a nice word, holotropic, sounds very sci-fi. Yeah, the research of holotropic states that has amassed it's amassed ample of evidence from some of these researchers that consciousness is non-local to the body. Okay, so holotropics is from the Greek word meaning hollows, meaning whole, and tripian is to move forward. So holotropic is like the whole moving forward. The word holotropic translates from moving towards wholeness. Okay, so the primary principle of this technique is that healing comes from within the people practicing and breath work. Okay, so holotropics is about trying to become whole and sort of heal from within with practicing of breath work. Okay, and you've got to think about how important breath work is when it comes to activities like yoga, Tai Chi and martial arts. That's definitely used for releasing energy. That's why you shout. It's not. It's to program a bit of aggression. But when people do shouting in martial arts, it's so you're kind of like exhaling, and you're putting your intention and stuff into the energy of your exhaling and doing the motion, the punch or whatever. So it's about the way you're releasing it all at once. So, and the same again with like when we lift something. Count with somebody, if you've got something heavy to pick up, you kind of count, but you're kind of like synchronizing your breath, aren't you? You're synchronizing your timing, sort of thing. And there's some breathing in it. 1, 2, 3. Take a big breath thing and lift up. And calming your emotions. Breath work's important with that as well. Get hold of yourself. So even down to it's possible with breathing techniques, you can learn to, in fact, control your autonomic functions. That's right. Like with the work of Wim Hoff, the Dutch guy. If you've not heard of him, he's broke a lot of records for being able to do sort of extreme things because of his doing breath work. It's been scientifically tested actually. In scientific conditions, he can raise his body temperature. You say in cold conditions, lower it in hot conditions, it can keep it good, and it's just because of breath work. In fact, it has courses, and I'll put some links in. He's got a website, but he's breathing, man. He's got some amazing achievements. Seem impossible, like superhuman stuff, but he's saying what it is that you're tapping into ancient, just the way the body works. We just forgot about it, forgot about being able to do it and stuff. It's like an ancient skill. And it kind of explains a lot of things for me, like Vikings on the epic voyages across the sea. I think it must be freezing, but no, breathing techniques and stuff, and you just adjust your body temperature. So that's pretty good. So yeah, I mean it's been tested in labs, helping scientists better understand how the body works and stuff. that just means, well, yes, folks, we can do more than we think that we can. And this is a literal example. Our bodies can do more. So yeah, I've got a couple of links. I'll be a link list, some references and stuff. I mean, at this point with the breathing and mention martial arts, you have to mention Falun Dafa as well, also known as Falun Gong, because that's similar to Tai Chi and Qigong. It's like breathing stuff and motions and that. But this, I think, is worth a mention because it's a healthy transformational practice, transitional practice to move. It's talking about the same sort of thing, move the mind and body towards sort of wholeness. Doing Falun Dafa, a bit like Tai Chi, improves your health, increases vitality, bringing a peace, all that stuff. And it's based on three principles of truthfulness, kindness and tolerance. So it's one of them. But with Falun Dafa, I've also it brings about health in your internal organs as well, and for many years it was encouraged by the Chinese government that people practice it, and even used to encourage the military to do it. So also that breathing work stuff, and just holding certain positions. Although I have to point out at this point that the Chinese government then changed their mind and made it illegal, and started arresting people and executing folk for practicing it. So it seems a bit harsh, It's not like Tai Chi. Yeah, everyone do Tai Chi, it's really healthy. We'll get the army doing it as well. Oh, we're banning it now, and if you do Tai Chi, then you're a bad guy. It's like, come on, I don't know what that's all about. But then CCP, Chinese Communist Party, then started harvesting people's organs. It's not a nice subject, but it needs mentioning, man, because it's like, you've got to think about it. It's a bit harsh, but then why? You've got to ask the question why. That's what I'm wondering about. So I'm asking here, why do you suddenly want those particular people's organs? I mean, if you're going to be taking organs, you're picking these certain people who do Falun Dafa. So, well, must be something to it then, But yeah, it's not a good practice, man. It's not a good practice, harvesting organs. So, if you're interested in signing any petitions or reading about it, I'll put a link in. So yeah, it's one of them. But the thing is the fact that, it seems to work, these breathing things. And it seems to be a bit of a theme through history. And if you think how long yoga's been going, meditation, it's been going a long time. So it seems to be something to this, Like I said, and I just needed to, because Falun Dafa is a big part of this consciousness conversation with Tai Chi and Qigong and breathing techniques. Can't sort of not talk about it. It's sort of intrinsic. So don't want to skip it at the conversation. Just it might be a bit awkward. But yeah, because it seems, like I say, all the yogas through the years, it seems since forever, it's been important. And there's something about it that seems as if it might be tied with this non-local consciousness reality. It seems to be something to do with, that just being the nature of human existence. Okay, so in this article then, there's a PDF you can download. That will be in the links. Conscious lifestyle. It goes on to discuss there's a lack of evidence for brain-based theories. Okay, I mean, I was quite surprised at seeing that. I'm sort of harping on it a little bit, but it just goes to show how we get ideas pushed on us a little bit, and it's like, But yeah, I mean, it says there exists no scientific theories to explain how consciousness is generated by material processes, nor does anybody have even a remote idea how something like that could possibly happen. So, It's just no explanation. It's like unprecedented, no explanation. I mean, the gap between consciousness and matter is so formidable that it is impossible to imagine how it could be bridged. In spite of the lack of convincing evidence that consciousness is a epiphenomena of the brain or matter, this basic metaphysical assumption remains one of the leading myths of Western materialistic science. It's a myth, it's not in your brain, but it's been perpetuated, no doubt. While there exists no scientific proof for the fact that the brain generates consciousness, there are numerous observations indicating that consciousness can, under certain circumstances, function independently of the brain and of the world of matter. this philosophy is referred to as non-local consciousness. So it's a philosophy, but then there's at least this, there's like there might be some evidence for this. So the body ego obtain the body, or your ego, mind, whatever, obtains accurate information about various aspects of the material world that we have not obtained in this lifetime through the mediation of sensory organs. Okay, which would not be possible unless consciousness is non-local. Okay, there are classical examples of the reliving of birth, or prenatal memories, and even that of conception. Okay, so some people remember being in the mum's womb and stuff. So they claim. All right. It's like we can transcend linear time. This is the thing. It's how it looks like. We can bend around things. I mean, we'll get into in the discussion as to why that's the case. Well, if it is the case, it's offer some interesting food for thought. Okay, so we'll go on. We're looking at like transcending linear time, experience vivid ancestral, racial, karmic episodes from the collective unconscious. Okay, so this is where we're talking about, if you imagine a cloud server where everybody's stuff's uploaded to it, sort of thing. Rupert Sheldrake expanded on it from the work of Carl Jung, who came up with the idea of a synchronicity. And interesting to look at why would they happen. Is it just your imagination? Coincidences? But if you break that word down, that's a coincidence, as in it's lining up, as in it's not to be dismissed, it's for real. If you listen to police officers, ask them about gut feelings, I think they'll, on the whole, they'll say that's a real thing. So it makes you wonder about this sort of stuff. And it's that phenomenon known as the 100th monkey effect. You can sort of look it up, Wikipedia and that, I'll put a link in. But it's this thing where it refers to monkeys, as in the story is that you've got this island, a chain of islands that are kind of all separated by sea and whatnot, and you've got some monkeys on there, and the locals throwing sweet potatoes down on the beach for them. Well, they're just throwing them down, and the monkeys can't eat them because they've got sand on. So if they chew on them, the sand will grind the teeth, so they can't have them. But then a monkey figures it can wash it in the sea, then it ain't got sand on it. And once enough monkeys, I said it's like 100 monkeys, enough monkeys have seen to do that on this particular island, then all the species of monkey on all the other islands, they can do it as well, even though they can't have seen anybody, as if enough members of a species have experienced something, then everyone gets an upload, gets a download, gets uploaded to the collective cloud server, and then everyone gets an update at the same time, sort of thing. This has been looked at, the 100 monkey effect, that's the thing. It's done it with rats in identical mazes in different parts of the world, You run them in one maze and then phone them up in the other part of the world and say, we've done ours. And then the rats of the same species will get through that maze faster. So it's almost like there is some kind of cloud server, exemplified here in this 100 monkey effect. But it goes further, because it's like, obviously, if there's a possibility we've got some kind of mind powers, or our brain, our consciousness isn't residing in the body and it can be elsewhere and even survive death, or as it was suggesting, it's still there, then military, they're going to want to use that, aren't they? They're going to have a look at that, surely. So at this point, I just want to do a quick segue into, just before we carry on with this study with the remote viewing, it's a big study. I just want to mention that with this remote influencing of senses as well, and this remote viewing stuff and the meditation, well, the BBC had an article back from April 2011 about, it's a nice headline, Tibetan monks being put into brain scanners while they meditate. I think, wow, there's been studies into scanning the brains of prominent Buddhist figures to see what happens. There's experiments done by Dr. Zoran Josipovic, who's also happens to be into like the meditation and the Buddhism stuff. So I've got the opportunity to, I'll do an experiment on this. He's a professor, a research scientist, and adjunct professor at the University of New York, New York University. So it had a nice quote here. It said, meditation research, particularly in the last 10 years or so, has shown to be very promising because it points to an ability of the brain to change and optimize in a way that we didn't know was previously possible. All right. So if you didn't know it was previously possible, now you know it's possible. That's the same as saying, guess what, folks? The impossible is now possible. So, nice. Awesome. Morpheus was right, But yeah, I mean, okay, so, yeah, let's get back to this article. Let's get back to the write-up about the Hal Puthoff study into remote viewing. So, and then we've got to bring in the talk of scientific remote viewing, or SRV, for short. And this has been studied by the Stanford Research Institute for a very long time. The CIA initiated remote viewing at Stanford Research Institute. They got a paper was written about it by Hal Puthoff, PhD, for the Institute of Advanced Studies. And so I've got an abstract from this from a write-up about it. So it's a well-known experiment. So, say in 1995, the CIA declassified it. So then you get to talk about it. So, they've approved that for release in 1995. But, I mean, this is stuff back from the 70s when they've sponsored these experiments back in the 70s. It's a program for the Stanford Research Institute at Menlo Park. I mean, they're looking into this phenomenon of remote viewing. Okay. And remote viewing is basically, being able to view things from a distance, like it sounds, using your mind, If you lost your keys, maybe you can just close your eyes and just think, I might see them. But it's that sort of thing. That's what the remote viewing is about. So they started studying that in 1972, So it's like, well, that's quite some time ago. I mean, right now it's we're getting to the latter stages of 2021. It's talking nearly 50 years. It's nearly 50 years ago, man. It's studying that I've had 50 years to study it. So it's like, well, so I'll put links into the paper so you can read it all for yourself. But I mean, it's like, it's basically they started disclosing it. Over 2 decades later of it, and now it's nearly 50 years. So it started garnering interest, a lot of interest, because they started to kind of get some decent results. Like Robert Monroe was the first Western person to write about how you get out-of-body experiences. Well, the first person I'd heard of doing it. Yeah, he's like Robert Monroe. He's like the famous person that's known for the out-of-body experiences. But it's his personal experiences, not just studying someone else doing stuff. No, he was having. I read one of his books. Yeah, it just kind of started happening for him. He was kind of freaked out at first. Went to his doctor and stuff, and I thought, shall I tell him? But he was cool. He was well respected anyway. So his doctor didn't think he was crazy. He's like, why don't you try this? But we read some of that Robert Monroe stuff. It's crazy. But anyway, we'll move on. We'll get into this a bit more. But I mean, I remember when he tried to. Just a quick side note. Robert Monroe. There's all kind of crazy stuff he was finding out, and he said he tried to go and visit. He's out of his body. He'd go and do stuff. Tried to go and visit the president, John Kennedy. But he found. I mean. He says that there was like some doorman, even in the out-of-body world, and that's like astral doorman. I was like, no, it's not available for visits today, and cleared him off. So, I don't know, astral bodyguards, man. But that's the thing, that's why, like I said, the CIA would want to study that stuff, because if it's for real, it's like for defense reasons, you want to make sure you can use it in case, enemies are, sort of thing. So, and even though they've sort of finished the study and then they've let us start reading about it, I'm sure you're gonna, if you get decent results, you're gonna carry that stuff on, aren't you? And stick it behind a national security iron wall, sort of thing. I mean, they did put it behind closed doors for over 20 years anyway. But I mean, but other people have studied this stuff. Not just, this Farsight Institute studied it independently. It was founded by Courtney Brown, PhD, who's a statistician guy to teach that, and he had for over 20 years. They've been studying it for a long time, getting good results. A lot of time cross projects as well, where they'll try and remote view the newspapers for next month, and then publish it, and then do another one the month after. But then they can, while they're doing that, they can look see if they was right with the current newspapers, sort of thing. But yeah, Farsight Institute got some. They've been doing it independently for 20 years, studying this remote viewing stuff under scientific remote viewing conditions. Got their own style, so I call it, because it's Farsight, I call it farsighting, because it's slightly tweaks a little bit to the way that they do it. But yeah, it's cool, man. Some free lessons if you want to check out. I'll put a link in again. Farsight.org. There's some free lessons called the Voyager series. I tried them, man. I tell you, that's why I'm into this. I'm into this stuff, and I tried it, and I gotta say, it did actually work for me on the second target. So I didn't even try it again. I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna get back on it, but. Yeah, man, I tried that remote viewing stuff, did the lessons, you have to find out about it and see what it is, and, you have to learn the little picture things that you have to draw it with, whatever you see. Certain little pictures you learn, like your little right angles, like a structure, and a little peak, like a little pyramid shape without the bottom on, that represents like mountains. Just simple drawings, pictograms you have to learn to describe the things that you see, and then just try and just think of nothing, and just see what comes in. It's weird, man. But yeah, I mentioned the Farsight a lot because I rate him, I do, because I've been following him for a long time, and it seemed to be onto something. So yeah, I tend to promote him a little bit. But yeah, you can go and try it yourself, man. Yeah, farsight.org. But anyway, let's move on. Segue back into the Tai Chi for a minute, and the breathing techniques, and because you get into meditation for the remote viewing and stuff, and just to mention like with the consciousness thing and remote viewing, I used to do martial arts, do Pencak Silat at one time. I played this blindfold game, and bear in mind things like Tai Chi and Falun Dafa, they're to kind of learning to control your magnetism through the breathing techniques, and where you sort of put your arms and stuff. You've got a subtle energy body, sort of thing. And you're trying to control your magnetism. So bearing all that in mind, I used to use martial arts. I used to practice like a blindfold game, where you'd someone have a blindfold, be in the middle, whoever students you've got, stand in a circle around, and the instructor will point to one of them, and then their job is to just walk up to and put your hand on your shoulder. All right. And then, while you're blindfolded, you'll try and figure out where they are and do some move on them while you're blindfolded, whatever. But there was a little kind of game to it, was that when you're walking towards the person blindfolded, you've got to think really violent things towards them, like you're going to go and attack them. Okay? And after a while, when you're wearing the blindfold, you start to be able to feel when the person's just about to touch you. It's like, I don't know, it's like that galvanic skin response kind of switches on, which is the thing when somebody's staring at you and you feel it's kind of that's electricity, that is building up, like a sense of heat. Galvanic skin response, you can look that up as well. But yeah, I mean, so someone's approaching you thinking horrible things, and with your blindfold on you can start to sense them just before they touch you, and you can get a little bit of an impression. It's weird, man. You don't think this stuff works, but you see in the movies, don't you? And, China and India and Africa, they've been around a long, long time in doing civilization. They doing civilization a long time while Europe was still frozen. So people have been around for a while, they had time to figure stuff out. You know what I'm saying? You've got to think about these things. But anyway, let's stay focused. I keep mentioning the martial arts, man. Because it's like, it's a bit like that. See, I got that scene in The Matrix Revolutions in the third film, and Neo gets blinded, but then he can kind of see in this like yellow impression, and it's a bit like that, but it's a lot more vague. Or maybe something akin to like Daredevil when he's doing his sonar sensing thing, but like that, but with the brightness turned right down, but yellowy. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, the breath work and visualization, and you do that to engage animism as well. And, when you do the animals and that, you mimic an animal in martial arts, but if you really get to know it and consider that animal, you can kind of think like it and sort of move like it. And so if you're a tiger, you could like jump a bit higher, or have a little bit more power and weight behind you, sort of thing. Or if, let's say, if you was a crane, you embody that, sort of do trance work in your head and try and pretend you're a bird. You can tend to be able to jump higher and stuff. Same stuff. I did Pencak Silat, which was based on the William Sanders Shimandi River Silat, Indonesia way kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, I'll put all the links in and stuff. But yeah, the non-local consciousness. There seems to be this thing where, this weird stuff, man, that we could do with the mind. So the study with got Hal. So the idea gets Hal Puthoff in, and it got a guy called Ingo Swann and Russell Targ as well. Ingo Swann was, supposed to be this. He was an artist, but supposed to be this psychic sort of thing. Okay, so I've got a quote from Hal Puthoff from Ingo Swann. It reads, "New York artist Ingo Swann chanced to see my proposal during a visit to the Baxter's lab and wrote suggesting if he was interested in investigating the boundary between physics of the animate and the inanimate. I should consider experiments of the parapsychological type." Swann then went on to describe some apparently successful experimentations in psychokinesis in which he had participated at Professor Gertrude Schmeidler's laboratory at the City College of New York. As a result of this correspondence, I invited him to visit SRI's Stanford Research Institute for a week in June 1972 to demonstrate such effects, frankly, as mentioned, out of personal scientific curiosity as anything else. So Swann and Hal Puthoff then get to meet. Swann comes in and says, "Swann's prior visit, I arranged for access to a well-shielded magnetometer used in dark quark detection experiments at the physics department at Stanford University." So that's some serious tech. During our visit to the laboratory, it sprung as a surprise to Swann. He appeared to perturb the operation of the magnetometer located in a vault below the floor of the building and shielded by mu metal shielding, an aluminium container, copper shielding, and a superconducting shield. As if to add insult to injury, he then went on to remote view the interior of the apparatus, rendering by drawing a reasonable facsimile of its rather complex and henceforth unpublished construction. So basically, they've put some detector in the most amount of shielding, and then another type of shield and another type of shield under the university building, so no one can get to it. And this guy's managed to just use his mind to disturb the detector and then go and have a look at the detector and describe how the fancy detector is arranged and constructed, which they probably don't want people to know about, which is why it was unpublished. So yeah, not only can I affect your super duper detector that's in all these super duper layers of shielding, but I'm also gonna have a look at the specs and that. Go on, Ingo. Okay then, so let's see what happened next. I bet that got some interest. In a few short weeks, a pair of visitors showed up at SRI with the above report in hand. Their credentials showed them to be from the CIA. They knew of my previous background with naval intelligence as a naval intelligence officer, then civilian employee at the National Security Agency several years earlier. and felt they could discuss their concerns with me openly. There was, they told me, increasing concern in the intelligence community about the level of effort in Soviet parapsychology being funded by the Soviet security services. So, I mean, by Western scientific standards, they're considered nonsense by most working scientists. But but the results, man, proof's in the pudding. As a result, they're worried about Russia. Then, so as a result, they've been on the lookout for a research laboratory outside of academia that could handle quiet, low-profile, classified investigations. An SRI appeared to fit the bill. Oh yeah. They asked if I could arrange an opportunity for them to carry out some simple experiments with Swan, and if the test proved satisfactory, would I consider a pilot program along these lines? I agreed to consider this, and agreed for the requested tests. So yeah, let me think about it. Hell yeah, send us your funding money. Yeah, he charges £1 million, but give me the money and I'll distribute it. Yeah, that's how it goes. Anyway, no, I'm sure it's all good. I don't want to make any unfounded accusations or anything. But funding, university funding, most universities can afford to teach for free. I'm just saying, all that grant money. But anyway, that's another. Don't stop me on. Don't get me started. Taxes, healthcare, education. Oh, God, I'll never end this podcast. But anyway, let's stick with non-local consciousness and this remote viewing stuff. The breathing, because the CIA's getting involved, man. And we might want our own project on this. So let's see, man. Yeah, because competition with nations. This is what I'm saying. Potential threats. These are the reasons I've got to cite this stuff. It's got to be a military concern. The national security, that's your job to consider these things, consider what potential threats are, and stuff like this, man. I mean, I was sort of the detector, man. How do you stop it? Just go straight through the shielding. Hello. Oh, look, this is fancy. Oh, this is an interesting component, So doing these studies then and been invited to help the CIA, which means help us. Yeah, we'll certainly, absolutely, we'll help you. So visitors show up, man. We've got the CIA guys getting interested. So agreed to it. So did some basic tests with objects in a box to start with. You've got to guess what they are. And the results were sufficiently impressive that in a short order of 8 months, we got nearly 50 grand, $49,909. Biofield measurements program was negotiated as a pilot study with a laser colleague, specialist guy, Russell Targ, who's so there's 3 people as well. Hal Puthoff doing the study. Ingo Swan's got some psychic skills. Russell Targ brought in for the pilot study, some CIA cheese, cha-ching. And he had a long time interest in involvement in parapsychology. So he's thought, I'll join this stuff. He's into this as well. And the experimental effort was begun. The dream team went in there. So they went from remote viewing symbols and looking to objects in boxes and envelopes onto remote viewing local target sites in San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, so later, judging later the results, this started handling it in double-blind protocol, which is designed to foil artificial matching, meaning that if I write down the target, put it in an envelope, give you the target to remote view, I might somehow, with my body language or non-verbal clues, somehow give away what the target is. So the idea of a double-blind test is that I'll come up with a target, put it in an envelope, seal it, it's blank and that. I'll give it to somebody else to deliver it to the remote viewer. So that way, we've not had any contact. So they're just opening an envelope delivered by somebody else who don't know the target. So no way to give anything away. So that's the old double-blind thing. And, Farsight, who I mentioned earlier, they use double-blind testing a lot of the time. So yeah. So that's what that is. So like I said, this is a serious study. How with his PhD, and Ingo Swann was an acclaimed psychic. He already had a reputation, that's why they've got him in. And Russell Targ is a American psychiatrist and into parapsychology as well. So they have a really serious look into this. So I'll put links in for the Wikipedia pages for these guys so you can sort of check them out. So next then, I mean, with this study came, they're trying to do locations then. So, they're doing coordinates, moved on from envelopes and, just a bit of guesswork locally, started looking at target sites. And they're thinking, we've got coordinates. What about further out, Determine whether... So the next section with the coordinates, I mean... They had an idea because NASA had a flight, or they had the Pioneer 10 about to do a flyby in Jupiter. So I thought, what about Jupiter? The coordinate, give it a coordinate, target and that, try and get someone to remote view Jupiter. Right, so try that experiment to remote view Jupiter. So yeah. So in that case, much to the surprise, they found a ring around Jupiter. Okay, so they wondered if perhaps the remote viewed Saturn by mistake, rather than maybe off. It's a long way out, slightly misaligned, whatever. But the colleagues in astronomy were unimpressed because they're thinking, well, that's just not very good then. It's got a ring, that's wrong. But then the flyby that NASA is about to do did in fact discover a ring around Jupiter. It wasn't anticipated. Let's get close, and it's not much of it's not like the rings of Saturn. It's the faint thing. So yeah, I mean, Ingo Swann had the idea to remote view for something just before the NASA Pioneer 10 got there. Saw it, ring around Jupiter. Everybody laughed, but it turns out there was one. So expanding the protocols yet further, Swann then proposed a series of experiments in which the target was designed not by sending a beacon person to a target site, rather by the use of geographical coordinates, latitude and longitude in degrees, minutes and seconds. Needless to say, this proposal seemed even more outrageous than ordinary remote viewing, giving me actual target coordinates. But I don't know. Makes sense now, because that's kind of how you do it now. The difficulties in taking this proposal seriously, designing protocols to eliminate the possibility of a combination of global memorization, of edicts, of photographic memories, and so forth. You got to try and look at ways you could trick it and make it scientific. So I mean, you got to get into the details of that stuff, aren't you? So suffice to say that the investigation in this approach was designed it's designated, doing the coordinates then was designated scanning by coordinates. Eventually provided us with sufficient evidence to bring up the contract monitors and suggest they test under their control. A description of the test and its results carried out mid-1973 during the initial pilot study are best presented by quoting directly from the executive summary of the final report of the second year's follow-up program. The remote viewers were Ingo Swann and Pat Price, and the entire transcripts are available and released in documents. Got a little quote from this. It's in order to subject the remote viewing phenomenon to rigorous long-distance tests under external control, a request for geographical coordinates of a site unknown to the subject and experiments was forwarded to the OSI group responsible for threat analysis in this area. In response, SRI, Stanford Research Institute personnel received a set of geographic coordinates longitude and latitude in degrees, minutes and seconds of a facility hereafter referred to as the West Virginia site. The experimenters then carried out remote viewing experiments on a double-blind basis, that is, blind to experimenters as well as the subject. The experiment had its goal the determination of the utility's remote viewing under conditions approximating the operational scenario. Yeah, what does it look like? Where is it? 2 subjects targeted on the site. It was a sensitive installation. One subject drew a detailed map of the building and grounds layout. The other provided information about the interior, including code words, data subsequently verified by sponsor sources. The report is available from COTR. So you can go and check. You can check this stuff out, which is what you ought to do. Always check this stuff out. Check it for yourself. That's the slogan. Okay, so it sounds like when they say the sponsors, the CIA are funded the program, so it sounds like the CIA or whoever's involved has managed to provide the information that the codes were correct. So it's obviously it's a sensitive site. I'm assuming a secure facility. I bet it was a CIA building or some part of it or something. So they verified that. So getting the resources, man. Seeing things from a distance, people can, the non-local stuff. This makes it look like I say, this is in the 70s, man. And then they had it goes on where they start looking at remote viewing Russia, Cold War era and whatnot. And interestingly, that's how Yuri Geller, famous spoon bender, that's how he became famous by because Israel and America, allies. So America loses a spy plane for the latest tech on over Russia. It's crashed, and they want to recover it before the Russians find it. It's embarrassing, and they'll steal the technology. So Israeli army had heard about Yuri Geller, heard about this kid who seemed to have these powers and that. So they got him in, and he managed to remote view the missing American plane. So they recovered it before the Russians found it. So that's how Yuri Geller was originally known for doing this. He just, was clever enough to market himself in the right way, to get out of poverty in Israel. So, yeah, Yuri Geller gets a shout out and the old remote viewing. So, yeah, they went on to, obviously you're going to remote view stuff, especially if you're concerned if Russia is, they're working on the parapsychology stuff, which is one thing you have to remember is that after the Second World War, America famously built rockets, got the rocket technology scientists from Germany, as part of the spoils of war. And Britain got the doctor staff, we got the Nazi head doctors, great, brilliant. But Russia, I don't really get talked about in history, is Russia got a lot of the mystics. They started looking at the mystic side of things with Russia, so there's a lot of stuff to be said about that. In fact, I might do a show on that as well, because it's quite interesting. So yeah, experience with Russia. Carried them out. Let's do a quick read on this. So midway through the second year of the program in July 1974, our CIA sponsor decided to challenge us to provide data on a Soviet site of ongoing operational significance. Pat Price was the remote viewer. A description of the remote viewing taken from our declassified final report reads as given below. I cite this level of detail to indicate the thought that goes into such experiment to minimise queuing while at the same time being responsive to the requirements of an operational situation. Let's just cut to the quote. To determine the utility of remote viewing under operational conditions, a long-distance remote viewing experiment was carried out on a sponsor-designated target of current interest, an unidentified research centre in the USSR, and the name is Semipalatinsk. Semipalatinsk. Takes a bit of practice. So, this experiment was carried out in 3 phases, was under direct control of the COTR. To begin the experiment, the COTR furnished map coordinates in degrees, minutes and seconds. The only additional information provided was the designation of the target as an R&D test facility. The experiments then closed themselves with subject S1, gave him a map, coordinates, and indicated the designation of the target being this research and development facility. And the remote viewing experiment was carried out. So, this activity constituted phase 1 of the experiment. Okay, so there's some figures and pictures here. It's like I say, I'll give you a link to this, and it's just explaining, basically what came up. Subject's effort at the building layout, subject's effort at the crane construction. It seems pretty good drawing, actually, technical drawing, and just stuff, man. This is physics shows subject's graphic effort for the building layout and attention to the gantry crane. Yeah, it's pretty good, man. It's very specific. One of them cranes that's like looks like kind of box on a rail kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty accurate. So the end of phase 2, well, not to say it's accurate, no, it's pretty specific. That's the word I'm looking for. A pretty specific drawing, an accurate representation. It's good drawing. So at the end of phase 2, it was gradually evolving into the first part of phase 3. The generation was unverifiable data concerning the Russian site, because obviously, you can't phone them up and say, "I've just been trying to spy on you from a distance and don't suppose." Yeah. It's one of them. It's seems some stuff, like I say. Yeah, it's like I say, the Euroghetto example, that's verifiable. Other verifiable things have done leading into this. So it's like, obviously, it's going to gather interest, this stuff. So this non-local consciousness thing is a really good experiment. That's why I'm sort of harping on about it, because it's well known and it's worth looking up. And like I say, in terms of the follow-up programs, I mean, other programs came from this. Other programs have come as a result, and the Stanford Research Institute is still going. Obviously, the CIA had interest, and I'm sure they'll probably carry it on. And I mean, why not? I won't just leave it if it's looking good. So, I mean, there's the other thing as well with this. It's like we can sort of cite this. We've been here before with this stuff. I mean, this is in the 70s. But famously, there was because Robert Monroe, I mentioned earlier, is the Robert Monroe Institute for Out-of-Body Experiences. Okay. And it's like, well, if the CIA are paying for these studies at Stanford, tentatively, apparently looking into this stuff, well, when Robert Monroe tried to visit Kennedy, well, Kennedy died in the 60s. Okay. And this study at the Stanford Research Institute and the CIA's put some funding in, wanted to do a little side project where that's in the 70s. So somebody in the 60s, presumably an American government, had astral bodyguards for Kennedy in the 60s, and this study by the CIA is in the 70s. So maybe they can already do it, or maybe that was another alphabet agency, or what's the deal? What is it? Somebody could do it already. So maybe it was. I was thinking maybe then that's a case of, let's say the CIA could do it, and they hear about Stanford doing it and have a proper big study. So they're perhaps thinking, let's get our own in there, and then we'll be close to them if they find anything funky out, and then we can be the first to know, sort of thing. Maybe that's part of it, or maybe they're using it as another controlled study. I don't know. It's just one of them, isn't it? Seems like they could already do it, sort of thing. I mean, the CIA results, obviously, theirs was never published, for their little bit, but everything else. I mean, NASA funded a study because it had follow-on. It got good results. They had follow-on programs. NASA funded a study, negotiated early in the program with Russell Targ to determine whether an internal state of an electronic random number generator could be detected by remote viewing processors. Okay, there's a study funded by Naval Electronics Systems Command to determine whether attempted remote viewing of distant light flashes would induce correlated changes in the viewer's brainwaves in the EEG, the electroencephalograph readings. Okay, so other people wanted to follow it on. Put-off states, for essentially all other programs during my 14-year tenure at SRI. However, the identity of the clients, most of the tasking were classified and remain so to this day. The exception was the occasional privately funded study. It's a bit highlighted here. We are told, however, that further declassification and release of much of the material is almost certain to occur. Well, yeah, in the end, they kind of expected a bit more transparency, I think, in them days. So, yeah, I mean, this program, for nearly 3 decades ago, even though it's like 30-year-old over, still gets some. It's such a big study. If you've never heard of it, it's worth checking out, because it even gets mentioned, gets its own little section, and it will mention in a paper that was for the teleportation physics, page 65. Teleportation physics had a section concerned with a psychokinetic phenomenon, and it highlighted how the Stanford Research Institute International had results, as did the CIA, so DIA, as I mentioned, Army Intelligence, and the Security Commission, INSCOM. So, I mean, it's so well known, and the results, man. And this was in a paper, so I'll put a link in for this as well, in a paper where somebody's looking into teleportation physics and appealing to the government to, get some funding and look into this stuff for teleportation, dude. So it's like, hang on a minute, we start with non-local consciousness, people having near-death experiences, maybe stuff going on, maybe you can affect electromagnetism, biofeedback with sensors. It's looking like you can see things that are inside envelopes that are sealed. Then the dude remote views a sensor and looks at the how it's constructed, and it's all shielded under the university. And then we're looking at military's getting involved. So we have the Eurogeller example, finding the aeroplane, so they can find stuff, see stuff, go to places. Man, it's like, what's going on? Saw Jupiter in there, so there's a lot of interest with all of this. So it would appear that the human form does indeed have some sort of Jedi mind power business going on, from the history of meditators and tales of epic feats and modern writings of the out-of-body experiences through people like Monroe and others, and the near-death experiences and these studies. I mean, the studies into remote viewing, remote influencing of the senses. It would appear that our consciousness is in fact non-local. It can leave the body. Perhaps it's never in there. Perhaps we're just kind of streaming in, or we have many bodies, which is something that Robert Monroe and the OBE stuff talk about, and the spiritual stuff. We're a multi-dimensional being, got several layers of bodies, like this sort of physical layer, and then a kind of spirit layer, the etheric layer. There's meant to be several layers of us, so this is how it's looking. Maybe we can just switch between them. Switch between the different layers, and maybe that's akin to switching to different layers of reality, like the example of changing frequencies or changing channel on the television. Different frequencies for different energy bodies. Perhaps that's sort of how it works, aka the chakras. Frequencies raise your vibration. We hear this a lot. So I mean some of this hardcore meditation stuff, gets into this thing called a light body. Literally, there's a body where there's just light. So I find interesting headline here from the Siberian Times, February 2015. You'll like this one. Mummified monk is not dead and in rare meditative state, says experts. Well, an expert said it, so gotta be true, right? Because an expert said it. So let's read this story. So I'll put the link in for this as well. Siberian Times, 2015, February. Forensic examinations are underway and the amazing remains, which is believed to be around 200 years old, having been preserved in animal skin. But one expert has insisted the human relic is actually in very deep meditation and in a rare and very special spiritual state known as Tukdam. Over the last 50 years, there's also said to have been 40 cases in India involving meditating Tibetan monks. Dr. Barry Curzon, a famous Buddhist monk and physician to the Dalai Lama, said, "I had the privilege to take care of some meditators who are in a Tukdam state. If a person is able to remain in the state for more than 3 weeks, which rarely happens, his body gradually shrinks, and in the end all that remains from the person is his hair, nails and clothes. Usually in this case, people who live next to the monk see a rainbow that glows in the sky for several days. This means he has found rainbow body. This is the highest state, close to the state of Buddha." Okay, so it says this event is well recorded. There's been well recorded specific accounts of occurred of rainbow body that have appeared in the Institute of Noetic Sciences Review 59 from March to May 2002. Wrote about this. The rainbow body, the fabled rainbow body. If you have not heard of this, it's where it's claimed in Hinduism and Tibetan history that you can basically turn to light, have just your light nature going on and shed your corporeal form. Okay, so the Noetic Institute has been recording these events, and they want to promote it so they can say, look, the resurrection in Jesus actually happened and is evidenced by the fact it's happening to other people. And so far, believe it or not, they've got 160,000 documented cases of people attaining this higher level of enlightenment. So, I mean, 160,000, 160. Just 160,000. That's a lot, man. They've been studying this. We're not seeing that in your big papers. Is it significant? Would it get in your local Western papers? Do people care? But I just don't believe in it, or what? But don't forget, Western science is newer, a lot newer than Eastern philosophies and science. India, China, Africa, man, they were doing civilization long before there was even Europe. It's frozen. So, yeah, body of light, Tibetan Jalus, known as a rainbow body, is what they call it. It's a certain realized being achieved the transformation out of ordinary bodies into a light body. In this process, the physical body dissolves into its natural state, which is that of a clear light. As the elements of the body is purified, transform the gross manifestation, the flesh, the body, the bones, etc., into a pure essence of 5 colours: blue, green, white, red, and golden yellow. As the body dissolves into these 5 colours, a rainbow is formed, and all that remains is the physical body, so the nails and the hair, any teeth if you got them. Okay, so 12th century practitioner Zhang Chen, who has attained this body, includes other teachers, the family of members of Namakai Norbu Rinpoche, for example. His uncle Urgyen Danzen, or Togden, his 2 teachers Changchup Dorji and Ayukadro, and also Changchup Dorje, master, and Nyala Perma Dendu. There's just some examples of people who have done it. And this rainbow body stuff, like I say, you get these quote unquote mummified Tibetan monks. Sometimes you find them in a cave. I've seen a documentary on TV about one that was in a cave that was all blocked up, and it's only because of an earthquake in India that kind of opened up this cave, found this dude, all shrunk down and stuff. But he was doing these mantras that you do. This documentary I saw was a bit hardcore, but this guy put these straps around his legs and around his neck, so if he's got to stay in this like lotus position or whatever position it was, and if it comes out of position, it will start strangling him. So it's like life or death. It's got to stay in position and keep doing it. So, I mean, it's some hardcore stuff, man. But they say when the Buddha got enlightened, he was that committed that he said he's happy to sit in so long that his bones all turn to dust. So you've got to be committed to this kind of business. But it's a bit like it reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the Star Wars, when it says to Darth Vader, "If you strike me down now, I'll become more powerful." And he does. It goes to hit him, and then he just disappears, man. It kind of reminds me of that. But maybe that's what it's referring to in Star Wars. So, I mean, this rainbow body stuff is claimed that it's happened relatively recent. 1998 is the most recent one. Somebody achieved it when Reverend Francis V Tiso witnessed the metamorphosis of Tibetan monk Khenpo Kas. It just literally became a rainbow body. Tiso's interviewed Lama Norta, nephew of Khenpo Akas, Lama Sonman Gaminsu. I don't think I'm saying these right, but I try my best. Young disciple is a friend of the guy. I mean, they had a chit chat about him. A few days before he died, a rainbow appeared directly above his hut. After he died, there were dozens of rainbows in the sky. Khenpo Ekas died lying on his right side. He wasn't sick. There appeared to be nothing wrong with him, and he was reciting the mantra, the only one I know actually, Om Mani Padme Hum, over and over. Does seem to do some work for me, but that's another story. According to eyewitnesses, after his breath stopped, his flesh became kind of pinkish. One person said it turned brilliant white. All said it started to shine. The shining being. So, Lama Ekos suggested wrapping his friend's body in a yellow robe, the type all Gelong monks wear. And so as the days passed, they maintained that they could see through the robe and that his bones and his body were shrinking. They also heard beautiful, mysterious music coming from the sky, and they smelled perfume. So, interesting. After 7 days, they removed the cloth, and there was no body. No body remained. Lama Norton and a few other individuals claim that after his death, Khenpo Akas had just appeared to them in a vision and in the dreams as well. So, dude's got a light body. He's popping into your dreams, man. He's turning up as apparition-y vision things. Yeah, check this out, man. This is badass. Now, I'm sure he's not talking like that, but you never know. I can't believe this, man, it worked. Could be like that. As I say, that's what I've been doing, but that's probably why I've not turned into light. Perhaps you need a bit more humility than that. But anyway. Said meditators continue to stay in a meditative state and he can become a Buddha. Reaching such spiritual highs, meditators will also help others, and people around the world will feel a deep sense of joy. Because that's the thing, if you get enough, if someone becomes enlightened, reaches nirvana, it should bring joy to the world, Which is why I wonder about, what if robots? What if AI gets enlightened? That'd be cool, man. Instead of being killer robots coming to get us all, it could be all peaceful gurus and that. You know what I mean? Bringing peace to the world. But anyway, who knows? But be nice to your computer just in case it gets legs and a fist. Okay, yeah, so, I mean, people getting rainbow body, man. Rainbow body. It's just, okay, fair enough. In Sufism, or Tasawwuf, okay, which is often referred to as Islamic mysticism, the inward dimension of Islam, or phenomenon of mysticism within Islam, is itself they call it the sacred body, or supra-celeste body. Supra-celestial, I like that. Yeah, Taoists refer to this state as the diamond body, so they've got a version of it. And those who have attained it are called immortals or cloud walkers. I'm saying it's more Star Wars again. It's Skywalker, Cloud Walker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, strike me down and I'll vanish. Hang on a minute. I'll do a Star Wars show actually, because anyway, Professor Joseph Campbell. Enough said. We'll do a show. Anyway, yeah, look at the yogic schools as well. Tantric practices, they call it the divine body. While in Kriya Yoga, it's referred to as the body of bliss. You know, in Vedanta, they call it the superconductive body. While the ancient Egyptians called it the luminous body of being, Aka or Karast. So, in the Mithriac liturgy, it was dubbed the perfect body. In the Hermetic corpus, it was referred to it as the immortal body, while the alchemical traditions and the emerald tablets call it the golden body. So, people have been talking about this rainbow body business. The non-local consciousness stuff is starting to look pretty legit to me. It's more legit than time travel adverts in the paper saying bring your own weapons, I reckon. And that could be true, we don't know. Right? So, okay, so going on into this research, man, this rainbow body stuff, what? So it's a Benedict monk to David Steindl-Rast proposed in 2002 scientific investigation with the Institute of Noetic Studies for the so-called body of light or rainbow body, saying that if we, like I said earlier, if we can establish that an anthropological fact that what was described in the resurrection of Jesus not only happened but others doing it is happening today, it would put our view of human potential in a completely different light. See, I like that. They're not trying to go, see, Jesus. No, they're saying, no, look. It's like more following the teachings rather than the dogma. It's like saying, no, look. Jesus did it. Other people are doing it. It's the fact that we can do this, and then you can look at these teachers, look at Shiva, look at Jesus, look at, they say, don't worship. It's not about worshipping me. It's about worshipping inspiration, because you'll do this and more. I mean, Jesus said that. Don't be impressed by my skills because you're going to have more mad skills than me. That's how they're talking. Because we're all humans, remember? Yeah, I like to say it's a little joke. Even the Pope takes a dump, right? They're all human, yeah? I bet you my bottom dollar the Buddha's had a trouser accident, because that's human, it's part of the human experience. I bet Jesus threw up on himself trying to figure out that water and wine trick. I got smashed. You know what I'm saying? They're all human, it's normal. Anyway, yeah, so Lama Karma's body, when he shrunk down, achieved this, his body shrunk down to about, what does it say? His body was about 175 centimetres tall, but 2 weeks after he passed away, in a sea turd, now shrunken down 20 centimetres, about 8 inches. So it started at 5'9", went right down to 8 inches, which means his body, including his skeleton, shrank nearly 80%. That's crazy stuff, man. That's the crazy stuff, And there's a book about this, The Presence of Light, Divine Radiance and Religious Experience. Okay, that's the University of Chicago Press, 2004, by Matthew T. Kapstein. I can go for that. It's got 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, so you can read about this, because that the article mentioning Campo Acco is mentioned in there. So, yeah, it looks like that book's a bit pricey, though, the ones I found. So, but that might indicate that it's a really good book, or one that people don't want you to buy. Yeah. Yeah, The Presence of Light, Divine Radiance and Religious Experience. So it might be pretty good if you want to have a look into the light body stuff and some of these mummification cases. Let's bear in mind a lot of these mummified monks of the bodies have been destroyed during the Chinese Cultural Revolution a few decades ago. So yeah, anything left behind, this heritage stuff, always worth checking out while it's still here. Okay, so I mean, it's back to the question: what is consciousness? Then, is it generated in the brain? Well, we know it's certainly not generated in the brain. There's no evidence of there seems to be a lot of evidence it's all non-local. So, I mean, what can you say, really? It's just, what do you think? What do you think? Go and check some of this stuff out. Definitely, always check the links. I'll put them all in. Whenever I do these shows, I will always provide all the links that I can. And if I'm speculating, I'll say, I'll make it pretty obvious. Because it's like, I ain't got the answers. I'm looking. I'm just asking questions, hoping for some answers. And I tell you what, the more you look, the more questions you get, it seems. So you don't really get too much truth exactly. But you get informed of this stuff. Put the effort in. Learn about this stuff. You will get informed. It does empower you. And it kind of almost gives you future vision in a way, in the way of the futurist, because you can kind of see what's coming a little bit more. Connect these dots. This is what I'm saying. It's why I do this stuff. Connect them dots, get a bigger picture, like the dot-to-dot drawing. The more you connect, if it's a complicated picture, you only connect a few dots. You've got no chance. So, I mean, this is my thinking. Just ask the questions, do the study, check stuff out, cross-reference. It's empowering. Although some of this information can be a bit mind-bending or might be a bit scary or whatever. For me personally, I'd rather know. I'd rather know what this stuff is. So, like I say, check it for yourself. It's kind of like a slogan or one of many. But yeah, check this stuff out, man. Definitely have a look at the links if you ever find anything interesting on this show, and just go and have a look. Go and read it, because, like I say, I ain't got all the answers. Nobody can get all the answers for things, But having a conversation, that's the important thing. Have the conversation. Yeah, it's really important. You can make a difference with this. We've all got to contribute, because there's this stuff in the world that we like, things like human rights, that didn't used to exist. Okay, and somebody needed to come together and start discussing the concept of it before there was even a word for it. Yeah, and that's how you change. That's how you make new things for the future. Okay, discussions of this sort of nature and discussions about the direction of the species and what are we doing. This, it makes a difference. You've got to contribute. It's like you build the foundations first and the walls, and you put the roof on, windows in and stuff. Things aren't built in a day, are they? We have to stand on the shoulders of researchers and such that have come before us. You spend 30 years studying something. It's really, really handy if you write a book, because then everybody else ain't got to spend 30 years learning about it, have they? They can read your book. Like, I got 30 years worth of information in one shot. Boom. And they can read another book. And it adds up. It all adds up. You start to get a bigger picture, a bit more detailed, give you clues as to where to go, find out new fascinating things. So yeah, definitely have a look into this stuff for sure. Empower yourself. Okay, so Exiled Minds Podcast, Liam Martin. Don't forget to tell as many people as you can possibly tell that it's convenient to tell. Don't go on an obsession stalking mission or anything. But yeah, have the discussion, man. Talk with your friends, whatever. But this is the way forward, because we can't rely on politicians to take us to where we need to get. Believe you me, it's always on us. It's always will be. So the cool kids, we need to dictate the direction of the species. I don't really think it's the job of billionaires, is it? It's the job of the masses. Damn it. So yeah, read your stuff, do your homework. Have the discussion. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to think different things. It's okay to change your mind. Alright? Based on new information. Alright, so let's be nice to each other, take care of each other, let's do our due diligence, bit of critical thinking. Don't go too far wrong with that. And make sure you tune into my Exiled Minds podcast whenever you possibly can. Now that seems like a smart thing to do. Might not be, but I'm biased. I think it is. So anyway, thank you very much. That's today's show on non-local consciousness. All the links, let's keep mentioning, it's all going to be in there. Give you as much as I can give you. And then, awesome. The end of the show, and have a good week, and I'll catch you next time. Don't know what show it's going to be yet. I like to sort of decide on the day, because then, makes it fun, I guess, in some way. It's random. Anyway, take care. Exiled Minds. Tell your friends. See you later.
Did they hurt you?
No. They were talking to us.
What did they say?
I don't know. They were all talking at once. They said we could go with them. If we chose to. Who did? Maybe. Who? The whisper people.
You control the barrier between your consciousness and what you see. You merely need to open your mind. The truth is, all knowledge, everything that is and was and will be, is everywhere.